Earlier this morning, both Democrats and Republican leaders spoke with reporters. Up next, remarks from Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and other Republican leaders, and we plan to follow that with a portion of today's Democratic briefing.
Hi, everybody.
Full house.
The important people.
This is the good,
Hardcore, exactly. Well, it's good to see everybody. We today continue in the same situation that we've been in, which is that Republicans are absolutely committed to securing the border. We welcome the Democrats back from their weekend in the sun in Puerto Rico, and also would note that the president has once again, in addition to providing very detailed, specific line items in terms of the memo that he provided a couple of weeks ago, what's required for border security, has also now been reaching out, inviting Democrats from throughout their caucus to come to the White House to sit down, to talk, which is the only way that we're ever going to get to a place where we have an agreement. And the Democrats are refusing. They're saying no. So while at the same time, we've got federal workers who now are not receiving paychecks. We've got a situation at the border that's got to be secured. The Democrats continue to put bills on the floor, which are bills that are not going to go anyplace and which fail to fundamentally respond to the kinds of things that the president has laid out that are necessary. So our conference continues to stand very firm with the president and firm with the American people. People across the country voted for border security, and it's the most fundamental obligation and duty of this body to make sure that we do everything that's necessary to provide that. So we're going to continue to make sure that we do that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Whip Scalise.
Thank you, Liz. We need to secure our border. That's what this fight has been about from the very beginning. Is the crisis that we have at the border. It's been a problem that's growing. The president ran and campaigned as a candidate for president, saying that he would secure the border and build a wall. And if you look at where this debate has gone, you see more and more Democrats now trying to say they're for border security because they recognize that it's a problem the country wants to see resolved, and yet they've been unwilling to put any money behind those hollow promises. This is a time where people need to actually stand up and say where they are. President Trump has said that the experts who right now risk their lives to keep our country safe said that it's going to take $5.7 billion to actually secure the border. Those aren't the numbers that the president came up with. Those are the numbers that his experts at the Department of Homeland Security, the people who risk their lives to keep our country safe, have said that's how much it's going to take. And so the president put a detailed offer on the table of what it's going to take to secure the border, and the Democrats have refused to even put a counteroffer down. Nancy Pelosi just 2 weeks ago jokingly said the most she would support is $1. $1. And then she called a wall immoral. People know that if you have a problem around your house, sure, you're going to lock your door, but you're also going to put a fence up to make sure that the people that come in are the people that you want to let in. When Chuck Schumer in 2006 voted for the Fence Act, the language in that bill allows the Department of Homeland Security to do most of the things they need to do. Chuck Schumer voted to authorize $50 billion to be spent to build fences. What President Trump is saying right now is it's going to take $5 billion to secure our border today. And so when Chuck Schumer voted in 2006, he voted to authorize $50 billion, but he never put any money behind it. It's time to put up. It's time to actually deliver on your false promises. If you're for border security, which many Democrats, even Nancy Pelosi, say they're for, yet they're not willing to put up more than $1 to secure the border, that's an insult. It's an insult to all of those families who didn't get a paycheck last week, who want this issue to get resolved. This issue ought to get resolved by people sitting at the table and actually negotiating in good faith, not refusing to come to the White House, not refusing to put a counteroffer on the table. When the president says, I'm willing to negotiate, even on the definition of a wall, he said he's willing to negotiate on the amount of money. And if the Democrats want to provide less than what our experts who risk their lives say it's going to take to secure the border, they ought to put a detailed plan to show how they're going to secure the border. but people are tired of them saying they're for border security and yet refusing to actually support the funding it will take to secure our border. It's time for this to end. It's time for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to, for once, put a counteroffer on the table if they don't support the plan that's on the table that was developed by our experts who risked their lives to secure America's border.
The American public is looking at Washington and wants to find leadership. They know our government is designed to find compromise. They hear the arguments on both sides. Political strife in Central America combined with inadequate federal immigration policies have created a humanitarian crisis at the state's border with Mexico. That's not my statement. That's not the president's statement. That's the new governor of California, Gavin Newsom's statement in his budget summary. So yes, we do have a crisis at the border. Talk is that the Speaker believes walls are immoral, that her conference does not want to support any form or financials for a barrier. But one of the new progressive congressional women, Katie Hill from California, said this: I will vote for some money for physical barriers. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, fencing and walls have the same effect. House Armed Services Chairman Adam Smith. The wall is not in itself a bad idea. It's been done. They are saying this because they know barriers work. In San Diego, illegal traffic dropped 92% in the last 23 years because of a barrier. In El Paso, 95% in 22 years, and becomes the safest city, one of the safest big cities in America. Tucson, Arizona, 90% in just 15 years. Yuma, Arizona, 95% over 9 years. So the American public looks to Washington, and they want to find compromise, and they listen to a governor of California, who's a Democrat, new Democrat members and Democrat leadership, and the chair of Armed Services who said, yes, they would support some money for a barrier. The question raises, what is the offer from the Democrats? This entire time, even before the shutdown began, the president has now offered more than 3 different offers. Reasonable, moving more to the Democratic side than before. The Democrats still have not offered anything back. For those workers who have not been paid, the question is, will Speaker Pelosi continue to hold her own members back from a vote to actually get out of the shutdown, to open government back up and have border security at the same time, to actually create what government is supposed to do, compromise on both sides? Yes, I was here this weekend, and yes, there were a lot of Democrats in Puerto Rico and going to Hamilton. I hope they learned within that musical, yeah, Congress has to compromise. So what is their offer? What is their idea? Because the only thing I see on the floor this week is political theater, and that's unacceptable. That is not what we should be doing. Open up questions. Let's take it the same way we have before, and because you're back, you look good too. Welcome back. Sometime I missed you too.
It's great to be back.
Yes.
So Speaker Pelosi is putting a bill on the floor that's virtually identical to the bill that you were whipping in December to open the government up on a temporary basis, and the bill that the Senate Republicans passed by unanimous consent. So what's wrong with taking that approach now?
She has border security in it?
She has exactly what you had in it.
We never brought a bill to the floor that didn't have border
Well,
security in it.
yeah, but you were talking about a clean CR, were you not?
We didn't whip one that did not have, no, the Senate passed one like that, but not the House. The House passed their version over the Senate that had $5.6 billion in it for border security. Right. The Senate did not pass that, and so now we've got to find a compromise. The problem with what Speaker Pelosi is doing is she's just prolonging this shutdown. What needs to happen, and the president is correct, in 45 minutes, we can get this done. I've been in every single meeting. Never once have I heard the Democrats make any offer of any direction. And that's the holdup. What she's doing this week is political theater. It's going nowhere in the Senate. It's prolonging the shutdown. And I think now is the time to make sure we take this serious, come together, and find a place that we have common ground. Yes?
Given Congressman King's recent comments on white supremacy, should he resign?
I think that's up to Steve King. The voters have elected him. The House Republicans denounce his language. We do not believe in his language. And we've decided that he will not serve on any committees. I'll leave that up to him to make that decision.
I have a question for you, Mr. Leader, and then I have one for Congresswoman Cheney.
Which one do you want to go first?
I can start with you.
Okay.
Do you think that the NRCC should support the primary challenge to Steve King?
This is still early about whether Steve King is even running for re-election again. So that question
Are you urging him
that
not
question.
to run for re-election?
Steve King can make that decision, but that decision will come down to his own voters. But that's too early to stipulate because there's no time. They haven't filed, and that's a question for later.
Congresswoman, I'd like to put the same question actually that Mary just put to the leader. Do you think that Steve King, is there a place for Steve King in Congress considering his rhetoric?
I agree with Leader McConnell, actually. I think he should find another line of work. I think that we've been very clear. I think it was a very significant and serious step to remove him from committees. And I think that you've seen now repeated, this wasn't the first time, but his language questioning whether or not the notion of white supremacy is offensive is absolutely abhorrent. It's racist. We do not support it or agree with it. And as I said, I think he should find another line of work.
Would you support his primary challenger?
Yes.
Now, the last member of our Congress to be censured was Charlie Rangel. And
After
that
an
was over
ethics
and
investigation.
that was after an ethics violation. So now the RNC is calling on Speaker Pelosi to take action against those Democrats with ties to Louis Farrakhan. Now, given this is over a very offensive speech, are we going down the road of censuring members of Congress over offensive speech or being tied to very offensive people at this point? And what are your thoughts on that, essentially?
I think it should be very clear to the American public that when there was a individual that happened to be in our conference say something that we disagreed with, we believe the base of our country is fundamentally different than what he talks of, we took action on our own. I've watched on the other side of the aisle speeches made, and what Steve King said wasn't on the floor of the House, and we took action. I've watched Democrats being accused of different crimes. I've watched Democrats say things that was offensive to all Americans. But the real challenge here, I watched the Speaker be silent. Republicans will not be silent. But I believe it's a responsibility of their conference to take action if they believe in the words and the language of what America stands for. Yes?
Just going off of Steve King, this is not the first time that Representative King has said something offensive. Why take such a strong stance against him right now?
I'm a brand new leader. I listened to what Steve said. I brought Steve in and met with him. I also did research on what Steve has said in the past. I believe this party is the party of Lincoln. I was raised in a family of Democrats, and I chose to be a Republican based upon the belief of how this party was created. This country is created that all men and women are created equal. There is no room for white supremacy. That's why I took a strong action. That's why I wanted to make a statement. That's why I did something, and the steering committee did as well, and the whole body, something as serious as this. We don't take this lightly. But I would ask, especially from the previous question, there is a role for membership inside your parties. That if you allow that type of activity to go forward, you're complacent. If you allow people to speak of Nazism and call people of that, if you talk about what I've watched some of these new members say, but I listened to a speaker who said she's not in censorship, that she doesn't believe that she should say something about it, that is wrong. I hope the American public sees the difference between a Republican Party and what they believe in, and a Democrat Party, what they're allowing to tolerate.
Last question.
Does President Trump share your views?
Which view is that? That we need border security? Yes, he does. Appreciate it.
About-
Take care.
No, about Mr. King.